A trio of tons in aggregate cascaded onto our access path at dawn, feeling like a divine penalty. The noise wasn't merely intense, it was absolute, as if the universe had concluded our connection to the exterior was now revoked. The delivery man offered zero acknowledgement, simply tossing his butt into Mother's flower bed, tooted his horn twice, and departed. He left an imposing mound of grit and jagged stones isolating us from the street. Grandpa Frank was positioned on the veranda, binoculars in hand. He brought them down gradually, whispered, "Child of a cracker," and grasped for his aluminum bat, the one wrapped in silver adhesive tape. I'm positive that Club has experienced more conflict than many unions. He held back, for the moment, but the implication was clear to us all. A fuse inside him had just blown. The whole mess began a few weeks prior, when the Maple Hollow Homeowners Association appointed itself the ultimate arbiter of neighborhood aesthetics. Its leader, Miss Georgia Lattimore, matriarch of pale-hued athletic wear and insincere local camaraderie, issued Mother 3 citations. The issue? Our lawn supposedly lacked coherent decorative elements. Her precise grievance centered on a plastic flamingo we called Ricky and a porcelain amphibian making an obscene gesture. Georgia claimed they disrupted the area's visual cohesion. Mother found it amusing initially. Grandpa did not. He retorted that cohesion was for singing groups, not paving. Georgia penalized us $300 and delivered baked goods to our doorstep that had the texture of vinegar-drenched fiberboard. Grandpa consumed them regardless. His reasoning, to internalize the foe's deficiencies. On the day the aggregate arrived, Mom was positioned at the threshold, gripping her mug as if it were a binding contract. "This must be an error," she murmured. Precisely then, Georgia paraded along the pavement, clipboard in hand, resembling a Caesar surveying vanquished territory. "Greetings," she chirped. "Merely a minor horticultural modification. It's an Article 14B of your agreement." Her lips curled. It was the association grin, one that remained disconnected from her gaze. Grandpa offered no reply. He pivoted, went indoors, and closed the entry. He emerged 120 minutes after, donning his vintage military headgear, a sleeveless angling jacket stuffed with adhesive strips, and pulling a collapsible seat, appearing as someone preparing for a confrontation. He positioned the chair firmly at the boundary of the access path and took his place. No words, no motion. He just gazed at the stones as if they'd individually slandered his lineage. By dusk, the full severity of George's action became clear. Egress was impossible. Mother's vehicle was marooned. The sanitation lorry skipped our collection. The postal carrier wouldn't venture beyond the heap. My child, Ellie, couldn't make her scheduled time at the refuge, and our perishable food rotted in the carport. Grandpa remained mute throughout the ordeal. Only deep in the night did he finally declare, "We won't be shifting those rocks." "They will." Upon Ellie's query of who they were, he raised his eyes, utterly grave. "The despots. The association." The following daybreak, he began drafting designs on grid paper, a smoke hanging from his mouth, a sparkle in his gaze absent for ages. Ellie loomed nearby holding her device, pleading to broadcast his work. He paid her no mind. When I inquired about his activity, his response was, "Constructing retribution." This explains my presence at the supply depot at 7 a.m., purchasing 10 sacks of pigment powder, a pair of PVC tubes, and an alarming quantity of adhesive stripping. The checkout clerk was unfazed. She'd likely witnessed that expression previously, the expression of a person nearing the edge of domestic combat. By the week's center, Grandpa had assembled his invention, the gravelator, a powered hand truck fortified with steel supports, propelled by a yard blower, and equipped with a small camera. He trialed it in the rear garden, flinging colored aggregate into a blow-up feline basin. Ellie captured this at low speed, overlaid intense audio, and uploaded it. The footage became an instant sensation. Abruptly, Grandpa Frank transformed into the aggregate champion, the web's latest public icon. It mattered little to him. As the globe chuckled, he was poring over layouts. I discovered him reproducing orbital images of the vicinity, marking specific access paths with a red pen. "We strike during the assembly," he stated. "Every vehicle, single location, ideal objectives." Ellie murmured, "You intend to return the gravel?" He smirked. "A deposit for deposit." I ought to have intervened. I ought to have pointed out his age was 73, with a problematic hip. Instead, I asked, what is my role? Since a fraction of my being, a profoundly weary fraction, yearned to witness Georgia's self-satisfied expression obscured by a heap of her own meddling. Local residents began aligning, sequentially. Hank from opposite us joined. The man who believed the lunar mission was faked, yet revered Grandpa as a commander. Mrs. Price, the ex-librarian Georgia had ousted from the panel over purported bake-off revenue issues, appeared, carrying aged minutes in justified anger. Larry, the tow rig operator indebted to Grandpa since 2008, even loaned his vehicle. Our cellar became a command center. Grandpa distributed aliases. He became Stonewall. Ellie was dubbed Tech Flamingo. I was Lady Shovel. We possessed diagrams, a marker board, and a dedicated anthem. It was madness. Yet, for the first occasion in ages, our home crackled with vitality. On the dawn of the maneuver, Grandpa convened a strategy session in the carport. He'd affixed a pale cloth to the partition, displaying a projected Google layout of the development. Red XS indicated every panelist's automobile. This day, he declared, stick in grasp, we educate them on the sensation of equity. Roughly 40 pounds for each car. Hank lifted his arm. Regarding aerial bots, I spotted one lingering by my postbox yesterday evening. Might be association oversight. Grandpa narrowed his eyes. Ellie interjected. I'm on it. I reconfigured Grandpa's vintage auditory device into a frequency blocker. 10 minutes of power, maximum. Grandpa patted her back. You're what's next, child. By 7:30 a.m., the procession commenced. Larry's lorry moved ahead beneath a covering, hiding 6 pails of aggregate. Ellie occupied the co-pilot's chair, relaying information via a two-way radio. Grandpa trailed him in his Gull vehicle, now colored tactical green, a tiny U.S. banner waving from its rear. I followed in our household car, hoping authorities wouldn't be summoned. The association's urgent assembly began promptly at 8 in the local recreation hall. Georgia convened to re-establish control and handle the latest defiance. Within, she occupied the lectern, clad in her pale-colored professional attire, speaking on the significance of communal cohesion. Externally, Grandpa was getting ready to reshape that very concept. Mrs. Price maneuvered a trolley of complimentary Java inside, excessively scolding, noisy, and sufficient to generate disorder. Hank activated a fire detector using a charred bread slice. Amid the pandemonium, Grandpa and Ellie commenced their task. Pail after pail, they deposited aggregate onto each panelist's vehicle. Georgia's Lexus received a twofold portion. When she finally perceived it and rushed outdoors, the car park resembled a detonated quarry. Who is responsible? She shrieked, cosmetics running down her face. Grandpa provided no response. He was already moving off in his vehicle, unhurried and resolute, like a vintage bandit heading toward the dawn. Ellie threw a pyrotechnic canister for theatrical flair. It sputtered twice, emitting a weak puff. It was irrelevant. The myth had begun. By that evening, the video surfaced on the web. The tag #Gravel Justice was popular across 3 territories. Unacquainted individuals online labeled Grandpa a flag-waving dissident. He described himself as merely on time. The association panel contacted their legal counsel. In 24 hours, Georgia retaliated. She dispatched 6 new citations, postal box hue disparity, an authorized yard decoration, and refused container exposure on off days. Next were the aerial bots, a pair humming over our shingles like irate insects. Grandpa dubbed them aerial despots. Ellie blocked one signal, and it fell to the grass like an injured fowl. We interred it near the lean-to under a little marker stating, "Here rests conformity." The following assault arrived via post, litigation. Georgia, acting for the association, was taking us to court for property damage, psychological anguish, and vindictive application of horticultural supplies. I almost anticipated a demand for the aggregate's repatriation. Grandpa remained quiet. He merely lingered in the carport, gazing at the documents. Deep into the evening, I located him wiping down an aged timber case. Contained within were pictures, awards, and a worn parchment. The initial HOA articles, endorsed 3 decades prior by him personally. We established this area to maintain green grass, not intimidated residents, he whispered. I then understood this was beyond a simple dispute. It was about restoration. He reconvened the group. Our conflict with stones is over, he declared. Now, we battle with facts. Mrs. Price grinned. In that case, you should examine this. She produced a file brimming with invoices, expenditures for seating that never materialized, neighborhood improvements that were fictional. Ellie started verifying figures, assembling their argument one data sheet at a time. They activated a web page, maplehollow.com. In May hours, it featured images, invoices, direct contrasts, and even a repeating clip of Georgia grinning uncomfortably at an opening event for a non-existent recreational area. The page propagated rapidly. Georgia became frantic. She positioned high-intensity lamps around her property, increased the penalties twofold, and dispatched unsigned mail cautioning locals about treasonous behavior. Yet, the momentum was shifting. Individuals who previously averted their gaze now visited, offering Java and murmuring, "We support you." Next arrived a development nobody anticipated. Ellie unearthed a municipal planning file from 3 months prior to the aggregate event. It detailed a civic requisition, identical HOLA, identical aggregate volume, destined for Parcel 17. Our residence was Parcel 16. The entire affair was an administrative blunder. The municipality intended to dispatch the stone for a canine recreation area 2 avenues away. When Grandpa reviewed it, he guffawed so intensely he almost tumbled from his seat. This whole thing ignited because an individual penned a 7, not a 6. He rocked his head. The true antagonist was poor penmanship, it seems. Georgia, however, persisted. She aimed for the throat, submitting a request to extract Grandpa's military banner pole, asserting it breached elevation rules. That banner mast had existed longer than her residency in the region. Grandpa offered no rebuttal. He simply remained next to it for an extended period, his palm on the steel as if sensing its pulse. That evening, Ellie created a recording. Not a humorous image, not a prank, just Grandpa caring for the banner in the dawn's glow. A narration stated they could penalize a person for his grass, but not his dignity. It became a massive hit instantly. An ex-military organization shared it. And by the following day, Georgia was inundated with irate messages from individuals insisting on a retraction. She refused. She intensified her stance, vowing to scrutinize all unauthorized exhibitions of national loyalty. This proved the final breaking point for the majority of the vicinity. Residents started arranging assemblies excluding her. Mrs. Price collected neighbors in her rear garden, providing refreshments and collapsible seating. They recounted their experiences, the unjust penalties, the intimidation, the anxiety. Grandpa heeded, his tone never escalating. "We only required a bit of daylight," he remarked. The ultimate confrontation occurred a fortnight after at a Crisis Association assembly. Georgia was at the lectern, her voice trembling, yet she still held on to her power. "Specific inhabitants," she declared, "have participated in defamation, destruction of property, and digital harassment toward this panel." Grandpa got up from his chair. "And specific leaders," he counted, "have lost sight of the definition of neighborhood." He advanced, clutching the original HOA articles. "As per this document, any inhabitant may propose a governance evaluation with 10% backing. I possess 42 endorsements." Inhalations. Georgia attempted to interject, yet a different pain list, the timid, anxious Mr. Benson, arose. "I support that proposal." The ensuing events resembled a film. Ellie displayed the proof onto the partition, forged endorsements, unaccounted for money, and a duplicate of Georgia's message labeling neighbors' visual burdens. Georgia attempted self-defense, yet she had lost her audience. The ballot was rapid, 59 favoring ousting, 12 opposed. As Grandpa declared the outcome, the chamber burst forth, not with disorder, but with reprieve. Georgia slumped into her seat, ashen and mute. For the inaugural occasion, Maple Hollow's matriarch was utterly speechless. Mrs. Price was named temporary leader. She pledged openness, public finances, and genuine assemblies. Ellie offered to oversee the webpage, sharing news and fiscal reports. Grandpa rejected all roles. "I'm pensioned off," he stated. "Anyway, I'm victorious." A week passed, and the municipality issued a mea culpa for the aggregate error. They proposed to haul it away. Grandpa refused. "It has secured its spot," he pronounced. In its place, he transformed the mound into a creative work. He encircled it with colored rocks, set flora, and affixed a placard declaring, "The skirmish for Parcel 16. We arrived, we dug, we overcame." The vicinity was different following this. Postboxes became vibrant. Children romped on the pavement once more. People weren't afraid of penalties for trivial matters. The subsequent association gatherings featured refreshments, mirth, and legitimate balloting. For the inaugural time in ages, Maple Hollow seemed vibrant. Ellie composed her university application piece on it. "My grandfather, the aggregate champion." She attached an image of him gesturing to George's inundated Lexus, captioned, "Decompose in fragments." It secured her admission to her ideal institution. They inquired if Grandpa would address the incoming students. He claimed preoccupation with determining his hammock's orientation. On the commemorative day to the aggregate's arrival, the vicinity hosted a street celebration. Tables populated the pavement. Youths maneuvered on wheels. A person barbecued sausages. As the light began to wane, all congregated by the aggregate heap. Grandpa mounted a collapsible seat and offered some remarks. "This mound began as an issue," he stated, his tone serene and dignified. "Yet we transformed it to something superior. Occasionally, the finest method to rouse a vicinity is with a bit of commotion." The crowd applauded. Cups tapped. For this moment, no one glanced behind them, worried they might be violating a regulation. When the lamps activated and joy resonated through the avenue, it struck me that the aggregate hadn't been the true adversary. It was an evaluation, a notification that societies perish when individuals cease to be concerned, cease to find humor, and cease supporting each other. We discovered that the most minor insurrection can reconstruct something grander than its origins, and periodically it requires a 73-year-old fellow with a hand truck of stones to educate people on the feeling of liberty. So, sure, perhaps Grandpa ignited a local conflict. What emerged, however, was harmony, the noisy, chaotic, splendid type that endures. I will state this, whenever I observe that aggregate heap at the front, with Ricky the Flamingo posted as sentinel and the banner flapping overhead, I grin, because, just this once, the regulations failed. How about yourself? Have you been forced to confront an absurd association or an individual intoxicated by authority? Share below. Was Grandpa justified in his resistance, or should he have ignored it? Regardless, recall this, periodically, equity is delivered one scoop at A.